Bloody awesome! Bloody awesome! Bloody awesome! Bloody awesome! Bloody awesome! Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Bloody Awesome Movie Podcast. My name is Matt Hudson from What I Watched Tonight, and joining me once more, and as ever, is the statesman to my kingsman.
Hey, it's me, John Burke from BurkeReviews.com. How's it going, Matt?
It's going very, very well. I've almost lived in a cinema this month because it's such a stacked month, but I'm never ever gonna complain about that. But stateside, how is it? How are things?
Things are going pretty well. It's like you said, it has been a really active movie month. I think I've seen more this month than all summer, and I'm hoping to squeeze in a couple of more before the end of the weekend. But I've been staying busy, getting ready to go back to work here in a couple of weeks. New school year, and I'll be teaching a college course as well. So I'm like busy. It's a busy.
Yeah, like I say, this is a stacked show, so let's do it. In these shows, the Bloody Awesome Movie Podcasts, John and myself, we discuss the major releases from the month just gone. So in this case, July 2018. We dive into the films with our opinions and thoughts, and we always aim to keep things spoiler free, so fear not about that. So, like we've mentioned, July is stacked, so let's get into it. JB, can you please reveal movie number one for July, please?
Okay, well, it's actually only July for you. I got to see this movie back in June, but because it's such a big movie this summer, I think it's in the top 3 worldwide for box office. Incredibles 2, directed by Brad Bird, starring Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, Sarah Vowell, Huck Milner, Catherine Keener, Bob Odenkirk, and Samuel L. Jackson, who's my personal favorite. I love Frozone so much.
Yes, this one came out a bit later in the United Kingdom, but it's, 13, 14 years in the making since the, let's face it, splendid Incredibles. The first Incredibles film was incredible. It was fantastic. It was a wonderful piece of animated cinema, or just as a superhero film, sorry. It was excellent. And now I guess the question people were asking was, could Brad Bird come back and give us The Godfather Part 2, The Empire Strikes Back, or of these kind of films in Incredibles 2? And I'm going to be a English gent and throw over to you for that first opinion. So, was it worth the wait, and did it live up to that first one? It's not always fair to compare, but I think when it's as good as The Incredibles was, you kind of have to.
Yeah, well, one, I mean, just the technology and the look of this film is insane. Like, how much the visual has progressed in the 14 years. It looks stunning. I just saw, there's another movie on this list that I think affects this, but when I saw Incredibles 2, it was the best action movie I saw at that point all summer. Like, the set pieces in this movie are nuts. Some of the most innovative and memorable action sets that I can recall in any superhero movie, to say the least. And I think it lived up to the first one. I had a lot of fun with it. My wife actually came. She doesn't always go to opening night movies. She's not as big a fan of the crowds and stuff. So, but for usually Disney or Pixar, she'll come out. And I'm wrong. She did not come see this with us. She just saw it 2 weeks. She actually saw it the night that my daughter and I saw another movie on our list. So she saw it this month. But we had encouraged her to do that because Taylor, my daughter, and I loved the second one so much, and we thought the Jack and the raccoon would really make my wife have a blast. And so we were encouraging her, and she came out and very happy that she went and saw it. She actually took my daughter's friend who didn't see it with us. They went and watched it while my daughter and I went and saw Sorry to Bother You, which we'll talk about later.
I'm glad you mentioned Jack, because I think he's the standout of the film.
Yep.
At him and Frozone, you've mentioned already, there's calls for Frozone to have his own standalone film, and I would be surprised if they started to put a Jack one together somehow, because he is awesome. And what you mentioned, Raccoon, the humour in this film also hit well for me. I enjoyed the humour. I really enjoyed the action set pieces. What I got stuck on, though, was it didn't feel overly fresh. It didn't feel new. It felt like The Incredibles with a new skin, which I would say bothered me, but that's for me. It stopped it from overtaking the first film. I don't think it was as good as the first film in terms of. I think, but that may also be because when that first one came out, it was so good and it felt new, it felt different. Whereas I think maybe people expected something incredible from this film, and there are lots of people out there who think this is a lot better than the first film. I mean, it's pretty much it's a few bucks away from making $1 billion already. So people are rushing out to see this, and I had an absolute blast with this film. I don't think it's as good as the first one, just because I don't think it doesn't feel like any kind of rejuvenation. It just feels a bit of same old same from the first film. But to be fair, that's not a bad thing when the first one was as good as it was. But yeah, the action set pieces were fantastic. The humour was good. I like how they switched it up a bit, and they've got Mr. Incredible. Bob is now the house husband, and Helen is out there leading the charge. And of course, it's a Pixar film. It's awash with messages and comments to the audience throughout. So, as a starting film, it's not a bad one at all to start with. And like I said, it's a juggernaut. It's charging through the box office.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't seen the first one in a while, so I meant to rewatch it before I saw the second one, and I just ran out of time, and I haven't gone back to it since seeing the second one. But I had really fond memories of it, and I do remember loving it. I think because the second one's fresher in my mind, I have a little bit more affection for it. I don't know. I liked Holly Hunter getting so much to do, like, you know, Elastigirl being the lead more or less this time around. I thought it was really cool, even though we can't get into spoilers, but some of the story felt unoriginal or uninspired in certain points, and that was disappointing.
Yeah, that's my main drawbacks, was that after 13 to 14 years, I guess maybe I am being overly harsh, but I'd hoped, not expected because I'm not a moron, but I'd hoped that Brad Bird would have had brought us something like you just mentioned with a bit of originality to it, something a bit different. However, it's a tried and tested formula. There are things which are slightly different, so the role reversals in there, but I can't argue with how good the film is. I'll never sit here and say it isn't a good film, because it definitely is.
Definitely, agreed.
And also, just a quick one as well. There's if anybody has epilepsy, there's been a warning, because there's a few scenes in the film which could trigger that, and it has been fixed for the most part, certainly in the UK, and I know in most of the major chains in the US. But if anybody is listening with epilepsy, bear that in mind.
Yeah, it was a really cool sequence, but definitely a little insensitive because it comes out of nowhere. And I saw it opening weekend before they had even, like, they started posting things about it, like at the box office, like warning you about the lighting and whatnot. But and I heard some reports. I think Slash Film talked about that, and like that it kind of was shocking and kind of messed them up a little bit, even like visually. I can't remember exactly. It's been a month since it's been out in the States, but we'll transition from a family-friendly film, Incredibles 2, to our next film. Matt, what's up?
The next film was The First Purge, directed by Gerard McMurray, starring Ilan Noel, Lex Scott Davis, Joyvan Wade, Mugger, Patch Darragh, and Marissa Tomei. It's the fourth film in the Purge franchise, which started way back when with Ethan Hawke, and it was this very isolated film set in one house. It's a home invasion film with the horrendous performance by Max Burkholder as the young boy, which I'm never going to get over that. They've bought, basically, this is a prequel to that first Purge film, and it goes into the origins of where the idea for the Purge came from for the new founding fathers, which are supported by the NRA, which will come as no surprise to anyone listening. But basically, for me, I'm just going to dive straight into it. It felt very much like what the last two films in the Purge films. It's maybe a bit more violent. There's an attempt at messages and social commentary, but because they're so undercut by the cliche and convention of this franchise, that they become irrelevant. And guess what? There's more neon lights, because when there's a mass purge or a cull, everybody dresses up in neon in the world. So I did not enjoy this film at all.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page. I found some joy very little. There's a few like edits that seem like they just screwed up. Like there's stuff that happens, and I'm like, without spoiling anything, there's a part where there's like a window shattered, and there's no explanation as to when or why the window is shattered. And it seems like we should have had one. And then there's a character who kind of vanishes and then shows back up, and it's just the writing is really weak. The worst part, though, to me, was the tone shift. There's a part where this movie becomes an action film and is no longer a horror movie at all. And it's over the top, like B-movie level action, where like a character is posing with his guns after he shoots someone from behind him without looking. Like it's the most ridiculous. Like people are dual wielding like assault rifles. It is so ridiculous. And it, I don't know, because my favorite of the 4 Purge films is the second one, Anarchy.
Same, yep.
And mainly partly because of the performance. Who's I can't, is it
Frank Grillo?
Frank Grillo, thank you. I knew it was like Frank something, but yeah, I'm really happy with John Bernthal as the Punisher on the Netflix series, but he would have been another good choice, I think. And he basically plays a Punisher-esque vigilante type character, just allowed to be that because of the Purge. And I really found a lot of joy watching the second one, not in the movie so much, but you know, I had a good time watching it. Election Year, I liked parts of it. I didn't think it was great or anything, but I was fine. This one I'm definitely down on. I did really like is it Elon Noel maybe?
Ilan, I think it is.
Yeah, I thought he was great, and I want to see him in an action role, because he kind of becomes John McClane at one point in this movie, or at least like a wannabe John McClane, not to his fault, but to the writing of the movie. And I could see it. Like I thought he was a powerhouse in this film, and I think Lex Scott was the female lead, and she was also really strong. I thought both of them gave really good performances. And the social commentary is undercut later in the film, but it's always, they've kind of had it even in the first film. It's just this movie's like really on the nose. There's no subtlety to the commentary whatsoever. And I don't know that there needs to be in a horror movie. Like you can just be straightforward with your message, I guess, but it does kind of like fall to the wayside as the film moves through. And I'm really shocked that Marissa Tomei did this movie. Like, she doesn't need to. She's been in a lot of stuff, and her role in this film is important, but also minor in terms of like screen time and stuff. So I don't know.
Her hair colour's nice as well. What's one of the best parts about the film, I think. But it's also, I mean, James DeMonaco, he directed the first 3 Purge films. He produced this film, so it's the first one of the franchise which he hasn't actually fully directed, and it does show, like you say, in that tonal shift. But I don't know, I think about the social commentary, I think these films do try very hard to be serious with their commentary, but they are undercut. Certainly in this film, it's just, at times it just gets too much and it gets a bit too silly. But I preferred Anarchy as well, I think, because it took what the first film did and just expanded it. Not so huge, but it expanded it. It took it outside, and it was novel and it worked. And then the third film started to feel just like another extension of Anarchy without anything really different. And the political aspect didn't work. And this one, I'm guessing. I mean, the thing is, with the Purge, I know they've got the TV series coming up, and now that could work quite well. Yeah. I can't see a future for the films. I mean, this has made 100 million worldwide, pretty much. So they're still making decent money from a fairly small budget. So the appetite's there, but I'm not really too sure where they can go.
I would like I get they kind of explain this in this movie, but I would like to see a Purge film that isn't explicitly like murder and killing. You know, they explain that to a degree. Explain might be too kind of a word, but if they were to do like a heist like Purge film where like people are planning some big crime, because everything's legal, so it wouldn't just be I'm gonna kill this guy because he stepped on my shoes last month. You know, like, because that's kind of in the other movies. I think there's, especially in the first two, the three teenage girls in Anarchy that go on their killing spree, simply because like someone was rude to one of them or whatever. Like, they're spoiled brats and they're just gonna go kill it. It's like, not everybody's homicidal. Like, some people would just want a 74-inch 4K TV from the Walmart. Like,
I'd go for the donut shops.
Oh my goodness, man! All you can eat because it's the Purge. Yeah, like you would see more of that, I think, than the killing. And while that's not as scary, it could be an interesting premise. It doesn't have to be like, because again, this one I don't feel like really plays on the horror at all. The first movie really tries for horror.
Yeah.
But again, that performance from the kid definitely makes it a very tough watch. The second one, there's an edge of horror because the stuff that's happening is really dark and crazy, and so it works as horror. The third one, there is that kind of a cat and mouse game happening that gives you that suspense, and they do that a little in first Purge, but not the same level. It's more like conceptually horrifying, I think, in this one, as the story kind of unfolds. Or it's predictable, you could figure it out just from watching the trailers. But, and really, if you watch Election Year, because this movie tries to act like they're introducing a new thing, but it was actually kind of the subject matter of Election Year. So
yeah, it was. It just didn't feel. It just didn't feel particularly vital to me.
Yeah, I guess we've probably talked enough about a movie that neither one of us were really high on. Not particularly. I wouldn't say it's bad.
It's not the worst film of the year.
No, we've seen much worse horror films this year.
Yes, I would say to Purge the franchise, but it's not the first worst film of the year. I think the last two shows we've come across some horrible horrors.
Yeah, for sure. And so, again, if you are a big fan of the franchise, I don't think you'll be necessarily disappointed. If you wanted to be scared, I think you're going to be disappointed. I don't feel like they do a good job with the horror elements of this one.
Agreed.
That said, let's get into one of my favorite movies of the month, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Directed by Peyton Reed. This is the sequel. Peyton Reed also got to direct the first Ant-Man after Edgar Wright unceremoniously stepped down, which made me very sad. Although I got to give Peyton Reed credit. You're replacing my favorite director in a movie that I was very much looking forward to him doing. You had the odds of my liking it against him, and he succeeded. So, Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, Michael Pena, Walton Goggins, Hannah John Kamen, Randall Park, Michael Douglas, and Michelle Pfeiffer. And I think there's a couple other people that probably deserve mention but aren't in this list of the cast that I have here. But I gotta say, dude, I am a big Marvel movie fan. I've seen all of them. I think all of them in the theater, but maybe 3 or 4 of the earlier ones. Like, I skipped Iron Man 2 in the theater. I don't think I saw First Avenger or Thor the Dark World in the theater, but I think I've seen every other one in the theater. And I realized something with this after this movie is I think I like Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp the most. Partly because of, heavily because of Paul Rudd and Michael Pena. But also, these movies are fun. Like, even when the stakes are getting more and more serious per se, they're a blast. Like, the actors seem like they're having a good time. The characters seem like they're having a good time when it's possible. I mean, there's moments where they just can't have a quote unquote good time, but there's you believe that Scott Lang wants to be Ant-Man, like that he's doing this because he has a desire to be a better human being, and he thinks he can do that through this. And I don't know, there's so much joy when I watch these movies that I think I like them the most. As much I love Guardians, I was a big fan of the Avengers films. I always put Iron Man as my number one because it started everything, and it really made me care about Marvel movies, because I'm a DC person. Batman's my favorite. Despite all of the failed attempts of Batman that have been done, there's also been some excellent ones. But the Marvel franchise, like Iron Man, brought me in and made me care about these non-Spider-Man, non-X-Men Marvel characters. Because I've always loved Spider-Man, always loved X-Men. Every other Marvel is just kind of meh. Deadpool snuck in there, but he's technically falls into the X-Men universe, so I'm going to put him over there. But Ant-Man. If you had told me that Ant-Man would be a character that I cared about, or that would make me laugh, or like that he would have a friend like Michael Pena's character, no way would I have believed any of that possible. And man, I want Michael Pena. There's I think a fan petition or something where they want Michael Pena's character to recap all of the Marvel movies, like, and do like cuts of him like doing the dialogue and base. I mean, I want that to happen, Marvel. So whatever we got to do, let's get it on YouTube, or I'll buy a DVD of it where he just recaps the 20 movies from Marvel. Because my God, are those scenes so freaking funny? But what do you think?
If you told me I was going to go and watch a film called Ant-Man, I would have thought you were crazy. But let alone Ant-Man and the Wasp. However, I sided with you on this. I had a great time. I know a lot of people have Ant-Man sort of creeping up there into their top 10 because of everything you've just said. Because it's still it ties into the MCU. They're all going to, but they still feel kind of like they live outside of that universe slightly. They stand alone. And Paul Rudd as a superhero, it works. Again, when Ant-Man came out and I said Paul Rudd was going to be the superhero, you think, how on earth is that going to work? But then when you realise the character of Ant-Man and what he brings to it, it's a perfect fit. Evangeline Lilly, she's the boss in this film. She's fantastic. Michael Pena. There's a section in this film which involves a serum. That's all I'll say.
Oh my God!
Great fun. It is. I was in stitches watching it, and that's something to say about this film. Is it is genuinely very funny, and it's not. It's not always just verbal gags. It's visual gags and physical jokes. There's a lot of humour to be found here, and I enjoyed that. I guess we all know the Infinity War, without going into it. It's a heavier film. This was a lovely palate cleanser. Stick around for the post-credits scene, hell. But I had a great time. The action was good. I'm suddenly a huge fan of Hannah John Kamen after this film. I will just say that. Yeah. But everything worked. Michael Douglas, the old timer, Michelle Pfeiffer, the two of them together are great.
Lawrence
Walton
Fishburne.
Goggins.
Oh, yes.
Lawrence Fishburne, Larry Fishburne. Walton Goggins, who I criticised in Tomb Raider for being there because the character was terrible. He gets a bit more to do in this film. And I like Walton Goggins as an actor anyway. But yeah, Rudd, Lilly, and Pena and Hannah John Kamen are the MVPs of this film. If you're a Marvel fan, you're going to like this because Marvel seem to be able to do no wrong. If you're a DC fan, just watch it anyway because it's a comic book movie and it's a lot of fun. I mentioned all the time I'm a fair weather fan. I just go to watch the films and that's it. I had a damn good time with this film.
Yeah, and I got to give props to Randall Park though, man. I guess he's an FBI agent because there's no Shield, right? Like, I don't think Shield's still a thing at this point in the Marvel universe.
No, they mention it in the past tense.
Yeah. But Randall Park is the officer that is supposed to be checking on Paul Rudd's house arrest, and he's constantly trying to catch. Man, he has some of the funniest dialogue because he deadpans so much. I don't know if you know, but he was the quote unquote Asian Jim on The Office. There's an episode where they make Dwight think that Jim's always been an Asian guy, and Randall Park plays him for that one role, so a little Office nod. But he's so funny in this. I would like him to become a regular in all of the Marvel movies. Like, let him be like take the lead agent, because man, him and Paul Rudd work off each other really, really well.
I can't think of any performances in this film which didn't work. Everything just seemed to work nicely together. The chemistry was good, the action was good, the CGI was decent, the dialogue was good, the story was good. There's not really an awful lot to fault from this film, and it wasn't a film which I was when the 2018 roll call came out, and I didn't look at Ant-Man and Wasp and think, I can't wait to see that film. I'm going to have such a great time. But it just goes to show, never judge a film by its name or its content, because it was a damn good film. I had a good time, and hell, even if you don't like comic book films and you just want to watch a sort of an action comedy almost, check it out because you won't be disappointed.
For sure. Definitely lives up to the hype of Marvel movies. There has been some criticism about like the villains or whatnot, but I don't know. To me, we needed, like you said, a palate cleanser from Infinity War, and this movie does a good job of having antagonists, but not ever getting too heavy you know, it's a light movie with stakes though. Like the characters, there's in danger at times, but man, it just works. It's just a lot of fun, and I do love Paul Rudd. Some of my favorite comedies are him and somebody else. Like I love Role Models and I Love You Man. And God, this movie's up there for me with those comedies. It's super fun. Can't wait to own it.
Don't forget about his role in Anchorman as well.
Correct. Yeah. Oh God, some of the most quotable lines in Anchorman are his. Right, 60% of the time it works every time.
All the time. I see. Yeah. But I just couldn't. I don't know what it is. I think it's just because he just seems like such a nice guy. And when I think somebody's cast as a superhero, I immediately think it's going to be all action, all fighting, flying around, zooming around like Iron Man type thing. And I thought, how would Paul Rudd play that character? But obviously Ant-Man isn't that kind of character, and it works a bit like Doctor Strange. Benedict Cumberbatch just works in that role.
Yeah,
Paul Rudd just was made to play this role, I think, and his on-screen chemistry of Evangeline Lilly works perfectly.
Well, and Peyton Reed or whoever is choreographing the fights using the powers, shrinking and growing, and how they integrate things and how they use them to, like the salt shaker sequence, which was in the trailer, where she throws the salt shaker and makes it big and he runs into it. Just even how they decided to shoot that the camera goes inside the salt shaker when the guy hits it. Like that's just really strong filmmaking, and it makes it all the better. It makes it more fun because the action sequences aren't Paul Rudd just standing there going, toe to toe. He's gonna shrink down and hit you with some other weird thing. Like it's gonna be innovative and interesting, and that you owe to the filmmakers for just being creative with the skill set that the characters have. It's awesome.
And Hannah John Kamen's role as Ghost plays into that an awful lot. 'Cause she's a very interesting villain in the way that she fights, shall we say. But yeah, like I say, the filmmaking aspect is also very good, and I think that sometimes gets overlooked in this particular genre. So the film, there's some great visuals in this film, and like you say, the action scenes aren't just two guys or two girls just going toe to toe, fist to fist. There's some fun moments, big and small.
And I think that leads us to our next action. This is an action-filled month.
Yeah, talking about big, this is Skyscraper, directed by the wonderfully named Rawson Marshall Thurber, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Nev Campbell, Pablo Schreiber, Roland Merler, Noah Taylor, Chin Han, and Byron Mann. And this is a big old throwback to the old movies like the Towering Inferno and Die Hard, simply because it tries very much to be those two films. But
yeah,
the Rock's back again in his 15th film of the year, I'd imagine. He never seems to take a break, that man.
No.
It's good to see Nev Campbell back as well. I don't believe she's been in a major film for, I think, 7 years.
Scream 4, right?
Yeah, so it's good to see her back in the film. And in the film, The Rock is a former FBI agent and a war veteran who's now a security assessor for skyscrapers, which is good because the film is titled Skyscraper. And he's in Hong Kong, in China, and the world's tallest, safest building catches on fire, and he finds himself getting framed for it. So, and in amongst that, his family's in trouble, who happen to be in the skyscraper. An awful lot of twists and convolutions happen to make sure that he can be at the skyscraper. The major set piece in the film is actually in the trailer, which is a bit annoying, but that's probably the best part of the film for me. It happens kind of in the middle of the film. If you've got vertigo, you're in trouble, because they do a very good job of showing the scale of this film. And there's a lot. I don't know how this film was kind of like Rampage for me. It's similar to that in the sense that it isn't a very good film, but I enjoyed parts of it. But I'm now going to contradict myself and say, actually, I don't think it's a very good film. Particularly if it wasn't for The Rock, Dwayne Johnson's, just him and what he can bring to a role like this, I don't think this film would be spoke about anywhere near as much as it is. I think it's number one in the world right now, but I'd put that down to a lot of Dwayne Johnson's star power more than the story.
Well, and I haven't looked at where the money's come from worldwide, but I believe the fact that it was shot in China and features, that they're playing to the Chinese market heavily, and that's probably where a good chunk of the money came, because the Chinese market is huge, if you win the Chinese audience over, your movie's going to make tons of money.
Yep.
And that's been shown a few times. What was it? Not Valerian. Warcraft. The Doug Jones movie, not Doug Jones, excuse me, Duncan Jones, was bombed in the U.S., but was basically saved by China. I think it ended up making like $3 million or $300 million or something crazy because of China, because it made like nothing over here. And it wasn't a bad movie if you're a fan of the franchise, but apparently China loved it. And the thing I think I love most about Skyscraper, which I will be like you, I don't think this is a good movie. I think it can be kind of fun, but it's not that fun. Although it does move, it does like keep going, and
oh yeah,
I definitely don't think it's a bad movie. Just it's a knockoff. It's another Rock vehicle. It's clearly a movie that's written to lead him, but the standout I thought was Neve Campbell. Not just her performance, which I do like Neve Campbell. I've been a Neve Campbell fan since I was a kid, because of Scream, of course. I love Scream. I still, to this day, it's one of my favorite horror films. But I thought her character, that like, it was written really well by Thurber, who also wrote the movie. She's not a damsel in distress, which is totally what I expected from the trailer, that The Rock was just going to have to save her. She does a lot in this movie, and she some of it doesn't make any sense. There's a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't make any sense. The way the police in China operate, apparently, according to this movie, makes almost zero sense. But, because they just let some random person, like, guide them to things, apparently, is just how they do things. But I thought, like, the character being on par, like, they need each other. Like, they both serve the same goal. Like, he's not the hero and she's the damsel. They both have opportunities to save each other, and I thought that was refreshing, and a little more modern. It wasn't the old school films where it's like, oh, I'm a woman, I need help, and there it is. Like, it's like, no, she's a strong woman, and she yes, she's scared at times, but so is he. And I thought that's where The Rock really succeeded. He is really good in this movie, because this character is not some over the top action star like you get in Jumanji, or even and probably, I haven't watched most of the Fast and the Furious franchise, but from what I've seen of his character in those movies, he's a superhero. Like, the dude broke out of a cast by flexing his muscle in, like, Fast 6 or something. Like, here, though, he's vulnerable, and he nails it. I thought he was, he earned my empathy a lot, and I was impressed by that, because I do like The Rock. But I think of him as the WWE superstar, this over-the-top, larger-than-life action hero. And while he does things here that are over-the-top and that action hero, he's a human who is desperate to protect his family. That's it. And I think he succeeds really well at having that element of it. So there's definitely good here. There's some cheesy set pieces, some rip-off from not just... We mentioned Die Hard and Towering Inferno, but also Enter the Dragon, which is a weird, random, like, ripoff. But there's a mirror sequence in this movie that clearly was inspired by something like Enter the Dragon. I know there was another movie that did a similar thing not too long ago, too. But I didn't like the look of that sequence much. And also, there's a really blatant, like, kind of a Deus Ex Machina type plot hole of sorts in that sequence at the end, so can't go into details, but I was like, oh wow,
it's a massive plot. Oh yeah, it's ridiculous, but yeah, you're right. There's so much here that will make, if you try to take a film like this seriously, you're gonna hate it, because some of the things that happen just stretch all logic. But this is an action film. It's one of those kind of action films where it isn't quite the one-man wrecking band saves the day, because, like you say, Neve Campbell's character does an awful lot of the heavy lifting as well. Mm-hmm. But don't expect an awful lot of logic in these films. But I won't say what it is, but it's all over the marketing. And Dwayne Johnson's come out and said it in various interviews. But in terms of his character, he has issues as a character. He's like I say, he's not a warrior of a human being. He's had setbacks, and he's got some one thing in particular which holds him back from being that wrecking machine, which is quite an interesting idea, especially for a character like he
Yeah.
usually brings this, because he's obviously we're used to seeing him just taking falls down left, right, and centre. But in this film, they kind of take that away a little bit, and it helps. I think that helps as well, because had he been the wrecking machine, I think this film would have absolutely bombed.
Yeah, it would have been super cheesy, because it's already cheesy at times. There's some really cheesy line reads too late in the film. There is something. It's hard to not like give out specifics, but one of the, I think, kids, or he yells for the kid or something, and I was just like, oh, that was bad. But
the kids aren't played well. Not the performances, but the way the kids are used in this film. I didn't like that.
Yeah, no, I didn't either. And the worst part of this movie is the surrogate audience of people watching the events of the film, and they keep cutting to it, and I guess there's like, this is how you should be reacting. You should be saying or or applauding, and I'm just like, wow, why do you keep cutting to the audience? And it's so bad. I really didn't like that. And I mean, they've done that in tons of movies, and I don't know, it really stood out to me in this movie though, because like they do it in the Ghostbusters. I think maybe it's Ghostbusters 2, where they keep cutting to the crowd like outside of the museum, and they're cheering and things like that. Like, and that was bad, but it didn't stand out the same way. This one it felt blatantly obvious, like, hey, you should have this feeling too now. And man, that it just drove me crazy. But yeah, still didn't hate this movie. So it kind of fell in the middle for me.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. So it's not going to attack my bottom 10 of the year, but I mean, it's not going to be. It will be in that sort of lower middle section. Not because it's a bad film, but it's just kind of there,
Yeah,
and
it's blah.
absolutely just a vehicle for Dwayne Johnson, which isn't always a bad thing, because he seems like one of the nicest guys you could probably ever want to meet. But it's just another film by The Rock. I think this is. It's not one of his better films, but it's not one of his worst. It's not The Scorpion King, at least.
Yeah, and I'll say Neve Campbell, I kind of had forgot, because Neve Campbell was a strong female character in all of the Scream movies, too. I mean, she has those vulnerabilities moments, but ultimately she's always kind of a badass. I'd like to see her get a role like that, where she is the hero. Like, kind of like the Breaking In film from May, that wasn't very good. Not to the Gabrielle Union. No, it wasn't Gabrielle Union. Whatever the actress's name, I can't think of right now. She didn't do a bad job. I just thought it was a bad script. But if they could get a good movie and give something like that to Neve Campbell, I think she could pull that off really, really well, as long as the script's not bad. But she's definitely still kind of got that tough woman attitude that I don't want to see her do like Atomic Blonde type stuff. I don't think she's that type of action. But just like the, grind it out, persevere, tough girl, I think she could nail that. Or even go back to some slashers, Nev. Maybe that's where you're you're a scream queen who doesn't get thought of as a scream queen, because she's great in the Scream movies, even the bad ones. She's good.
Yeah, I'd like to see. It'd be interesting to see if she takes any more roles after, or she's offered more roles. Sorry, and I don't know why she hasn't been in more films since.
Apparently, she was on like 2 seasons of House of Cards, which must be the last couple, because I watched the first 3 seasons of House of Cards, and I don't remember her being in it. So, apparently she shows up somewhere. I didn't see like the last 3 or 4 seasons of it, so I don't even know how many seasons there are. Yeah, but yeah, whatever. But I think that leads to me introducing our next movie, which was one I was not looking forward to. Matt, was Mamma Mia. Here we go again. I had avoided Mamma Mia most of my life. I did watch it about a week before the sequel came out, and I didn't love it. I found the plot of the first movie to be really, really annoying. It was just that it was the only movie I can think of that really annoyed me as much because of this was Meet the Parents, the old Robert De Niro and Ben Stiller, where it's like, if one of you would just tell the truth, none of this would happen. Like, all of your lives would be so much easier if one person just opted to be honest about their feelings. And that drives me nuts, because while I do know there's definitely times where you will keep things from people that you love or whatever, but when it's right in front of them, and like you blatantly have been caught and you still won't share like what's going on, that annoys me. And that's the whole first movie. So the other thing with the first film, because it was a musical turned into a movie, is there's a lot of exposition and backstory just told to us. And that's okay, but it is like it sounds more interesting to see it than it does to just hear about it. In the second movie, that's what the whole second movie is we get to see Donna's backstory and how she met the guys and how she ended up getting pregnant with Amanda Seyfried's character, and to make that story, which that's a compelling story to me anyways, but then you cast Lily James, who I think is fantastic. Everything I've seen her in, I've had a lot of joy between Baby Driver. I actually really like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I'm not saying it's like the best movie ever, but I had a lot of fun watching that movie, even with the bad zombie effects that they had in it. I still thought it was a fun kind of crazy action movie that I didn't see coming. And then she was in a war movie that I saw at the Florida Film Festival 2 years ago. I am trying to think of what it's called. I'm going to look it up, but I really enjoyed her in that as well. And the Cinderella live action movie that she was in is fantastic. And I just, I thought she was so good in Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. Not to mention, she's got a really great voice, especially when you compare it to the likes of Dominique Cooper and Pierce Brosnan, who has no business singing ever. I'm sorry, Pierce. I know you could probably kill me and no one would ever know, but you can't sing, dude. Stop. But I actually liked the second one more than the first one, mainly because there's no real like ridiculous plot contrivances in this one. It's all a little more straightforward. It's a little more sad, I think, because there is one scene that I won't say exactly. I won't give any details, but I thought it was kind of mean for the movie to put it there, because I was like, oh, you're gonna make everybody cry with that. But overall, I enjoyed the movie much more. And to be fair, I didn't see the first one in the theater. Maybe if I had, I would have enjoyed it more. I also watched it begrudgingly, and so there's a lot of things that could have affected my take on it. But the second one, man, I had a good time. So I don't know. What did you think of the Mamma Mia universe, I guess?
Here we go again. Well, the first film I was dragged along to see it in the cinema, and there were people dancing in the aisles and they were having a great time, but it wasn't all that good. The problem I found was that, like you mentioned, it wasn't adapted from a stage show, and it felt like very much like it just the writer, I can't remember the director's name now, but it seemed like she didn't quite know how to transition from one medium to another, and it just felt like a way to have a lot of people singing some fantastic ABBA songs, and then they thought, no, we need to put a story in here somewhere, but we need to use the greatest hits as well, and it just felt like a hodgepodge of ideas, whereas this one, they focus more on the story, and they kind of used like the B-sides of ABBA's songs, and they do throw in some more of their greatest hits, and the story isn't particularly that brilliant, but I had such a good fun with this film. And Lily James, bloody hell, she sizzles in this film. She does. She looks great, she sounds great, and she had to fill Meryl Streep's shoes basically. But when the film, because it's a prequel and a sequel, so when the film's in its prequel stage in the late 70s, following Donna, Lily James' character, that's when it's at its best. Yeah. And you get to see young versions of Pierce Brosnan, Colin Firth, and Stellan Skarsgård, and there's so much fun. It just feels bright, breezy.
And the kids they cast as those young versions, even of the young friends, are fantastic, and really impressed with the casting director to find, especially the two friends of Donna's. They look so much like their older counterparts.
Spot on, yeah.
Yeah,
and Hugh Skinner is young Colin Firth. He got his mannerisms so right.
Yes, I agree, and to be fair, I can't get enough of Colin Firth at this point. I am a huge fan, and like I think him being in something will make me watch it. I'm still working my way through some of his movies, but the ones I've seen, he's so charming on screen. But the exception was the 2016 film I saw with James. It's a World War II, but it focuses on the Kaiser from World War I and him in hiding, who's played by Christopher Plummer. The crazy thing about this movie is Jai Courtney is the lead, and that's usually not a good thing.
That's not a good thing.
But he's actually good in this movie, I promise. Give that a chance. But she's also in Darkest Hour, which I forgot, but I really like Darkest Hour a lot. And she's in a movie this year I got to see at Tribeca with Tessa Thompson called Little Woods, which interestingly enough, she's also in Sorry to Bother You, but only as a voice, and for Tessa Thompson at one point, which is kind of interesting that they were in another movie together, playing sisters, actually. that I liked a lot though at Tribeca. And yeah, I just, she is a superstar in the making, and this movie I think really lets her shine, because Seyfried is good. I didn't like Les Mis either, which a lot of people can't believe when I say that, but I really didn't like Seyfried in Les Mis at all. I thought her singing was awful. She's much better, I think, in the two Mamma Mia movies, though. I don't mind her singing at all. Cher shows up looking kind of like she's had way too much plastic surgery. Like, she seems a little stiff. Like her face even seems kind of stiff. Like, it almost looked like claymation, like the director had to walk out and like shape her mouth to say the words. But
CGI her face.
Yes. But I want to give credit to the director. Ol Parker is the name. Yeah. But man, this movie's so much more cinematic than the first film, and obviously this was just a film. There is no staged version of Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, to my knowledge. And there's a lot of really cool transitions in this movie where we go from the different time periods, sometimes with reflections. Like, I was really kind of shocked because I was not expecting anything like that after the first movie, which is not cinematic at all. But again, based on a play, so that usually happens. You get this, depending on the filmmaker, you don't always get a really, interesting kind of reimagining of the stage play. A lot of times you'll just get a stage play on the screen. Here, it's a movie musical for sure, and you get some of those cinematic flourishes that, I mean, they're not like necessarily original or new, but they add something to the movie. They make it more visually interesting. So,
yeah, I agree. I had such a good fun with this movie, and I wasn't sure whether I was going to or not. But it isn't it's not. I don't think it's a great movie, but I had so much fun with it. Christine Baranski and Julie Walters together are excellent and get probably the film's best lines.
Yeah,
it's never not fun to see Pierce Brosnan, Colin Firth, and Stellan Skarsgård together. And if you like that first film, then you'll have a big old smile on your face. With this one, yeah, and you've just said it's a cinematic musical, so Greece looks stunning. The island of Greece they're in, Kalakari, looks just somewhere I'd like to move to.
It does. You totally threw me off, though. I thought you transitioned to the Grease the musical, but the movie, and I was like, you think that looks stunning? Oh wait, he's talking about the island.
John Travolta's hair was great.
It was fantastic.
The country, the island, the Greek islands look awesome. Pierce Brosnan does sing again, but don't worry, it's very quick.
It is very quick. Yeah,
stripped back. Thank God for that. But
or ensemble.
Yeah, he's kind of pushed to the back. But this is it's summer. This film was targeted for this time of year. It's full of sunshine. It's full of fun. Just, even if the story's a bit naff, dust off your hips. Just have some fun and just remember just how many good songs ABBA did actually have. So I had more fun than I thought I would do with this film, and a lot of that was due to the lead performances, but also it's just an inoffensive, fun movie which you can tap your feet to. It makes you smile. It might pull at your heartstrings a little bit, but there's nothing you won't see coming from a mile off as well. But hell, I had good fun with it, and I'd certainly say to anyone who was on the fence, go and check it out. It's a lot of fun.
And I will say, lastly though, I'm not like a fan of ABBA. I don't think it's bad music or whatever, but it's not something I would listen to on my own. Like, I wouldn't go like, all right, what's in the car today? Let's put on the ABBA CD. Like, that's not my style of music at all. But I could not get these songs out of my head for days, and I'm not happy about that, mind you. Like, but I can't deny how catchy they are, because, man, I was dreaming about these songs. Like, they were just like the soundtrack of my dreams for the next 2 or 3 nights, and again, not happy about it. Just pointing it out that they are super catchy as a result. So be mindful, because these are, like you said, these are like the B cuts for the most part, minus the couple of songs they rehash from the first movie. And they do a good job, I think, of weaving the lyrical content into the story too, even if some of it feels a little forced. But they make it work. Andy Garcia, I'm looking at you, even though good job.
Yeah, Andy Garcia and Cher a scene together, and bloody hell, that's the restroom scene, if you will.
Yeah, that's the run go pee app bathroom break.
you got about 3 minutes during it. But I had a good time with this film, and I have no shame in saying that it's a good, fun, breezy summer film.
Agreed.
The next film isn't. The next film is The Equalizer 2, directed by Antoine Fuqua, and once again teaming up with Denzel Washington, the King, Pedro Pascal, Ashton Sanders, Orson Bean, Bill Pullman, and Melissa Leo. Now, The Equalizer, the first film, was alright. I didn't mind it. It was a straight up action film. It had a lot of violence over story, but it worked. And Fuqua and Washington, they kind of had something together there where it was a good vehicle for him, for Denzel, to show that he can be that, arse-kicking older man, shall I say. But, I mean, now he's in his 60s. But it made a bit of money. It didn't do too badly. So, for some reason, they thought, well, nobody's asking for this film. Nobody really pushed it at his box office, but we'll make another one anyway. And I wish they hadn't, because this is just not good. I won't be too harsh. It's just not very good. I mean, it seems to want to take the major elements from the first film, but it still isn't anywhere near as good. Denzel is very good. He's damn good at what he does. I mean, he was in Roman J. Esquire this year, which was one of the worst films I've seen in a while. But he was very good as the character, and it's the same here. This film, I put in my review that this is just got straight to DVD, dripping all over it. It's just bloody awful. Ashton Sanders is okay. He's taken a big step down from Moonlight.
Yeah,
he's very good. I know you like Pedro Pascal, so I won't say too much about him. I mean, nobody's bad in this film. It's just people seem to just sort of turn up and, here's the script, here's what you've got to do it. Thanks. Here's my paycheck. I'm off.
Well, but I think who's bad is Antoine Fuqua.
Yeah.
And here's where I think he's bad. And I'm gonna look at the first movie too, because I just saw the first one like 2 days before Equalizer 2, and I had not seen it. I actually, the first half of the Equalizer, I was really, really into it. Like a lot, like almost like, wow, how did I miss this movie? This is really awesome. And it's because of Denzel, but it's because of the characters in the Equalizer. Like, it's so compelling to have this kind of mysterious figure in the first film of who is this old guy. You even have the two Beavis and Butthead-esque characters that work with him at Homemart who basically pose that question for the audience of, like, what'd you do before this? And he just kind of shrugs them off. I think he says he was part of the Temptations or something, or he was a Pip. That's what he says. He was a Pip.
Yes.
From Gladys Knight and the Pips.
Gladys Knight and the Pips.
And they're watching like a YouTube video. It's like, is that him? And we don't know, because the marketing in the first movie went ahead and told you what he was. But nonetheless, like, even watching the film, you're like, wow, I know he's gonna be this, like, action star at some point, but I don't see it here. He's just this nice guy who seems to care about everybody, and he's called back into this life of action because Chloe Grace Moretz's character is basically a prostitute. They never outright say she's a prostitute, but it's very blatant at points. She's a working girl, an escort, etc., but she's underage, and she's beaten, and it prompts him into work, and that he didn't realize that his one action was going to have repercussions, and I buy into all of that. The second half of that movie, though, becomes this over-the-top zany action character where his character, Robert McCall, breaks character. He does things that don't make sense to who we've been introduced to. Like, we've been introduced to this very thorough, precise OCD person who is meticulous, who can look at things and give you a time frame of how long it will take him to complete because he is so precise. And at the end of the first movie, the last half becomes Home Alone, but nowhere near as planned as Kevin McAllister. It is ad-libbed Home Alone. He puts everybody's life at risk. It's nothing like the person we've seen in the first half. And the second movie, they go even worse with the second half of the movie. Again, I think the beginning of the movie, we see he's still kind of living this vigilante lifestyle. And I think some of those early action sequences are kind of cool. I think Fuqua makes some interesting choices to not always show what he does. We just know that he did something at a couple of points. And yet, like, the scene with the frat guys or whatever, the business guys, I thought was really strong. I really liked that sequence. I thought it very much fits with who this character is. He's always trying to basically put what he views as the right behavior onto the people he meets. Like, you're doing things wrong. This is how you should live. Very much like an OCD type person, like, who has this, I don't know, godlike ability to kill people. But the second half of the movie, man, and I guess it's a spoiler, but I'm sorry, this deserves to be spoiled. He takes the bad guys into a hurricane. So
yes.
Right away, I'm like, wow, this is really stupid. But it does make sense. It's going to give him a sense of cover. It immediately made me worry that we're getting another Home Alone type ending. And we do, but it's worse than the first movie. And the thing that stood out to me the most was that he printed pictures, several pictures, of a person that was killed by the bad guys, and has time to staple them to a wall during the hurricane to psychologically harass the bad guys. What in the hell?
It went on forever.
Yeah, so long, and it's so dumb. And these trained mercenary soldiers make the stupidest choices, because I don't think Fuqua knows how to end his movies. I think every movie I've seen of Fuqua's that is an action film ends really, really questionably. Even Training Day has some questionable stuff happen at the end where characters do things that don't make sense to who they've been established to be. Magnificent Seven's the same way. Both Equalizer films are the same. It's like he's really good at creating these interesting characters, and then he just throws it out the window for the second half of the film, and just like, how do I make this big and bad and crazy? And Denzel is good enough to, like, keep it, you still care a little, but man, the second one definitely, it might as well have jumped a literal shark, because it is way over the top at the end, and I was not thrilled with a lot of this movie. Again, not Denzel's fault. I'm pointing my finger at Fuqua because it's the only thing that makes sense to me. It's they work together a lot, so Washington must like something that he does, but man, some of the choices he makes for the second halves of his movies are just outrageous.
Well, you're dead right in the sense that the first half is far better than the second half, because the first half is, it tries to sow some seeds and build up some intrigue. It's still not very good, but at least it tries. With the second half is just, I mean, like you say, there's trained assassins and mercenaries, and at one point Denzel walks into a bakery, turns on a fan, and puts bags of flour in front of it, as if that's going to deter anyone, but these idiots fall for it. It's just ridiculous. It's big men with big guns just running around shooting at each other.
Literally,
it goes on for far too long, this ending does.
What you just described, that moment with the flour and the fan, is totally something in Home Alone 1 that Kevin sets up to get, like, he tars and feathers Joe Pesci's character. Like, oh my god. Like, we're pulling...
I expected Pedro Pascal to fall down with a big tarantula on his face at one point
and
scream. We didn't get that, but I was also hoping that a stray bullet would come through the screen and wound me, just so I could enjoy or get some excitement from some of this film. It's so boring. Which I didn't think I'd say that, but I mean, I'm not going to... Again, I don't mean to be disparaging, because I definitely aren't, but I didn't expect an awful lot from a film like this. Whereas you get some action films, I don't know, we're going to speak about one later, which can be sensational, but this is just, I don't know, it's just there, but don't really know why it didn't. Like you say, you got the character of McCall. He helps out some disaffected youths. He's a Lyft driver, and he just wants to help people who are less well off than him. So he's a nice guy. He just happens to be a straight up cold killer. The introduction scene, I will say, was very good. I did enjoy that a lot on the train. The poor Turks never stood a chance.
Yeah,
but I didn't mind parts of the dialogue. Some of it was horrible, but I don't know. It didn't work for me. Like I said, it just felt like a straight to DVD. The end, the last half felt like what Bruce Willis has been crapping out in the last few years.
Yeah, I agree. It's way beneath what this movie could have been. I still think the premise is so compelling, and it's just the execution that's lacking. Because I think I am a fan of, like, the vigilante justice. Obviously, I love Batman. I'm a fan of the Punisher. I can get behind a character like Robert McCall in these films, but it's the execution's just not there. So it's so close, but so far in the end. That yeah, it's so far of the movies we've talked about to the point. Has been, I think, the collectively worst. With the first Purge not being too far ahead of this, mind you, but yeah, just not great.
If you're going to compare the two, if I'm really clutching at straws and pulling at anything I can find, at least to me the Purge as a prequel served its part in terms of that narrative and that franchise, if you will. I didn't read the Equalizer 2. I mean, it had a strange production anyway, because it was only pretty much announced a few months before it was coming out, and almost as if the studio and that it's almost as they thought, is anyone actually going to bother watching this? Whereas the Purge, the first Purge, I guess, serves the purpose that it set up what happened in the subsequent 3 films, even though we already knew. This film just felt like a needless continuation, and I too like vigilante justice films, but yeah, so far this is definitely the worst of the bunch for me.
Agreed. Now we haven't talked about the next movie. I'm not sure. I hope you have seen it. Have you?
I have seen it. Yes.
Okay. Unfriended, Dark Web, which is directed by I've lost it. Steven Susko. Stars nobody super famous, but we have Rebecca Rittenhouse. Betty Gabriel is probably the biggest name in this movie for sure, being in Get Out, and then something else earlier this year. Oh, the Purge election year, which I didn't remember that actually, but she was in something else this year. Oh, Upgrade. Yes. I loved her in Upgrade. God, I can't wait to own Upgrade. By the way, I really enjoyed that movie a lot more than I thought I would. But Colin Woodell, Chelsea Eldon, Stephanie Noregas, I totally butchered that, Andrew Lees, and a few other people. It is a film that premiered at South by Southwest when it was on the list for South by Southwest. All it said was untitled Blumhouse film, and it wasn't till the premiere that they finally revealed that this was a sequel to Unfriended. And sequel in concept, not in story at all. It has nothing to do with the original film other than how it is presented, which is completely on a computer screen. A novelty that the first film did not succeed with me. I was pretty much checked out of the first film by the first 30 minutes or so.
Agreed.
I was not impressed with that one. I thought this one, though, used it in a little better way, but also I think the story in this one is much, much better. Going with Dark Web, going with hackers, even though there's still some stuff in it that I don't love. I had a really good time with this movie. I was genuinely freaked out, and when I walked out, I was aiming my phone's camera away from me. I was a little more paranoid than when I walked in, which I think says something about a horror film. When you walk out freaked out and it lingers with you, it succeeded in getting those scares. Now, I wish we talked about this off mic, because there's supposed to be 2 different endings that are out for this movie?
I saw a story about this this morning, I think, or last night, and it's been refuted by some people, and other people are saying actually no, it's true, because we work in the cinemas, and the projector guys, they've got a note saying there's 2 endings and one is longer than the other, but whether that's true or not, I'm not sure.
Well, I read an article. I'm not going to remember who it was, but they sent 2 of their reviewers to screenings. One only went once, and so he only got 1 ending, but the other guy did get both endings. And so they apparently exist, although I guess they could have made it up. But I know that my local theater, I saw it one night. Big Tuna saw it a different night, and then QK Films, which is an Instagram friend of ours, they saw the same ending on a different night. So all 3 of us got the exact same ending on 3 different screenings at the same theater. So it does make it seem highly suspect. But there is descriptions of the second ending out there, so I'm not sure. But I missed this at South by. I did catch it recently, and I really enjoyed it, and I was actually surprised at the lead character. What is it? Matthias, played by Colin Woodell. Man, I thought he did a really great job of selling the character and making me care about what was going on in the movie. I don't know. What were your thoughts?
Um, what I fear most about these kind of films is that exact thing. Are the performances or the characters or the cast going to be just cookie cutter, cardboard cutout, generic, fodder? But yeah, Colin Waddell does very well in this film. Thankfully, leading this film, he's not just some idiot who you don't care about or you don't want to follow. He does a good job. Yeah, it felt very real. It felt very, very, very modern. And I guess a lot of the escapism of cinema was taken away because this felt like something which, I could come home and actually do, almost. The kind of the hackers, the dark web, the some of the things that they see, videos and that they see. I mean, it's probably all out there. But yeah, so the horror for me came from the reality. But there are some, it's a Blumhouse film. It's about teenagers. There's a big old death toll in some inventive ways and some a bit more blunt.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously the message is clear. Just be careful. I think it's the message basically.
Yeah.
There's some nasty people out there, and the dark web is not the kind of place you want to be hanging around with. But in terms of the film itself, I too didn't like Unfriended. It was throwaway to me, and it wasn't very good. This film, though, I preferred. I thought it was a lot better. It's yeah, I don't think the best way to put it. It probably better than it. For me, it's like Ouija, the Ouija film that came out, Origins of Evil, that came out a year or two ago, where that came off the back of an absolutely awful first film, but the second film was actually pretty good. It kind of strayed away from what made the first film so bad, and it tried something that I say different, like this film, and it succeeded. I had quite a good time with the film.
Yeah,
it's better than some of the horror films we've spoken about this year.
Yes, for sure.
It's not as good as some of the other ones.
No,
but I thought it's better than I thought it would be. I thought it would be. I just thought it would be one of Blumhouse's kind of errors. It's a $1 million budget, so they don't make films on a budget anyway. So it's going to make its money back and more. But I enjoyed it. I'm interested to see whether this alternate ending was a mistake or whether it was kind of a very, very clever marketing tool to get more people to go and watch it again to see if they get that second ending.
Yeah.
Which, if that's the case, hats off to the marketing team there. But no, I had a good time with this film. Well, I say a good time with this film. The realism of the story is quite unnerving because it's not, obviously the message in itself is something which should be heeded by everybody. So that is what I find horrific. But I was entertained by it for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was I cared about the characters, so I was stressed out for them. But to me though, when you look at the first film and the second film, and you think someone was like, "Hey, let's do a movie where it's all done from a computer screen." You're like, "Okay, well, what happens? A ghost. How does hacker not come up first? That feels like such a misstep that they went with supernatural for the first movie, where this one makes so much sense that it's on a computer screen. Now there's another movie, I think it's called Searching, that John Chow is the lead in, and it's also done all on a computer screen, and he's trying to find his daughter's gone missing, and he's trying to find her, so he's emailing and he's reading blah blah blah. It's supposed to be really, really good, and I want to see that very much. But I definitely think Unfriended, Dark Web, one, if you saw the first film, ignore it. Go into this one knowing it does not matter that you saw that first film, whether you liked it or not, because this one has basically nothing to do with it. They could have just called this Dark Web and it would have been sufficient, but I guess they're hoping for name recognition. Although Blumhouse is showing to have some questionable naming decisions. You look at Truth or Dare, which is one of the worst horror films that I've seen this year, that they put Blumhouse Presents in the title, where it's why would you do that? This movie's not good. And
because it's absolutely terrible, and they needed to get something to get people into the audiences.
But
I hate that film.
It's so bad. And I'm going to own that film soon, thanks to my local theater. We get, if you see 4 horror films, you get the digital copies for free. And so Truth or Dare, Breaking In, first Purge, and then Halloween, which I'm actually looking forward to. But I'm I don't want Truth or Dare, but okay, I guess I'll take it. But yeah, so that's Unfriended, Dark Web. I've like I said, I had a couple of friends go and see it, and they've also enjoyed it. I was pleasantly surprised. I kind of came out, again, paranoid, mind you, but also like it was one of those kind of like, man, that was way better than I thought it was going to be, and I'm really glad I went and saw it. So, yeah, that was my take on that movie.
Yep, I'm on the same page. It's better than I thought was going to be. It's better than it probably should have been. And yeah, just ignore Unfriended. This is a sequel simply in name only. It's a lot better than that first one. And yeah, I had a good time with it, and it keeps you on your toes, and it keeps you not wanting to put your Skype on. I'm not sure. Is this John I'm talking to, or have I been drawn into some strange game?
It's me. I promise.
Okay, good, cool. That's awesome. I'm not going to be the victim of something. No, it's a good film. I enjoyed it. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but it's better than Truth or Dare, that's for sure. But the next film, however, is it's on a different it's on a different spectrum. It's Mission Impossible Fallout, directed by Christopher McQuarrie, starring the evergreen Tom Cruise, Henry Cavill, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Rebecca Ferguson, Sean Harris, and Alec Baldwin. And this film is getting absolutely rave reviews. I even read today that a lot of people are calling it one of the best action films of all time, and others are saying that if it's not in the race for Oscars, like as in seriously in the race, then that something's wrong with the Academy. Now, I watched this. It only came out a few days ago in the United Kingdom. I think it came out the day later in the United States. So, and I've not been a huge fan of the Mission Impossible franchise. I like Ghost Protocol. I thought that was decent. I like the last one. But when they're not very good, I don't think they're very good. However, I was drawn in by the trailer for this film, so I thought it looked great. I was interested just to see Henry Cavill's moustache, because that moustache was better than Justice League as a film, I think. And also, this is a female's dream. You've got the vintage Tom Cruise and the new brew of Henry Cavill. But story-wise, this film is insanely good. It is so very good. The action is brilliant. The action set pieces in this film are awesomely choreographed. Everybody knows Tom Cruise does his own stunts, and when you're watching it, it makes it even more breathtaking, some of the things he does. It's well written, it's well paced for a longer movie, because it clocks in at best part of 2.5 hours, so it's not a short film. You've got Ethan Hunt and the boss baby, Alec Baldwin. But I think this is just I think when we go into this, we're going to... I mean, I don't know what you think about this film, which is interesting. I mean, particularly what you think, but for me, this is one of the best films of the year, I think, and I never thought I'd say that about a Mission Impossible film. But Tom Cruise he's fantastic. He's like the United States James Bond, and actually these films are almost better than some of the Bond films. Henry Cavill, I thought was fantastic. I wouldn't want to meet him in a dark alley, because that guy is big.
Yeah.
And when he throws down in the bathroom, which is in the trailer,
oh my God,
Christ, he'd put his fist through the wall. But Simon Pegg's, I know you're a big fan of Pegg. He's very good. Rebecca Ferguson, Angela Bassett's in this as well. Must throw that out there. But rather than me rambling on for first, let's just what did you think about this film? Because I thought this was sensational.
Well, I'm gonna do what you just did too and go. I saw the first film in the theater when I was a kid, and I liked it. I tried rewatching it a few years ago, and I found it really slow and boring, and it's a different style of movie. I saw Mission Impossible 2 in the theater, and of course Limp Bizkit did their take on the theme song, and it was Take a Look Around. I do like that song, I won't lie. I was a Bizkit fan at the time especially, but my God, does Mission Impossible 2 feel like MTV just threw up all over it. And I skipped 3 because of that. I didn't see 3 until about 2 weeks ago. I finally went back and watched 3, which was J.J. Abrams' first feature film. Philip Seymour Hoffman's the villain. It introduces Simon Pegg's character Benji into the franchise, which he's a super minor character in number 3. But I just watched it. I really like 3 a whole lot. I did see Ghost Protocol after everyone kept raving about the climbing on the building stunt. So I finally caved and watched that, and I thought, wow, this is actually really good. And then I went and saw Rogue Nation on opening day in an IMAX theater with my daughter. It was her first Mission Impossible, other than we kind of like watched some summary videos, so she'd at least have a kind of familiarity with IMF. And it's really interesting, though, that 5 was the first one I saw in the theater since the first one, because the 6th movie, Fallout, is the first true sequel in the franchise, where it actually has returning characters outside of the IMF characters. Like you have,
yeah, that's true.
Rebecca Ferguson and Sean Harris both reprised their characters from the last film, and the story is a fairly direct continuation of the results of the last one. And there's always some repercussions that carry over, but this is a true like story is still going, which was really interesting. And the performances were super strong. The chemistry between Simon Pegg and Tom Cruise is outstanding. Their comedic work together is so funny. There's this whole chase sequence that you see in the trailer. In the trailer, you hear him say, "Why aren't you going?" He's like, "I'm jumping out a window." But how that plays in the actual movie is so much funnier than what you get in that little moment in the trailer. And I love that this movie can have the humor, but still be, the stakes are super high. There's some intensity. That fight in the bathroom is one of the best fight choreography like ever. Like it's so intense, and every hit I felt like it was so impactful, the way it's shot and everything. It's quick, and yet it slows down and then it picks up again. It's just amazing. And Rebecca Ferguson, I was basically unfamiliar with before the last movie, and man, she is a awesome action star. I mean, she's got this move, I don't know if she's doing it or if it's her stunt person or if it's all CG, where she like climbs up the person and wraps her leg around their neck. And they do it like probably too many times, but every time I'm impressed and awed by like how fast she moves. I'm and I gotta say too, Alec Baldwin in this movie shocked me at least once, where I was so like, I can't believe the performance this guy's giving. I didn't even realize the movie was 2.5 hours until I looked it up afterwards, because I was in the entire time. I've done some reading on the stunts and stuff. Like, there's this skydiving stunt that might be the craziest thing.
Incredible.
Did you know they did it 106 times?
I didn't know they did it 106 times, but I noticed the technicalities of actually making the dive, and it's just ridiculous.
There's an article, I have it linked in my, I haven't posted my review yet, but I'll post it. By the time this podcast is out, I'll have my review up. I've linked to the article where like they, I think it was at CinemaCon, they went through like some of the details of that stunt. And like they had to jump out of the plane 106 times to get 3 takes they wanted to use. Like oh my god, like
6 times.
Yeah, and they had to shoot in a very I can't remember which country, but only one country would allow them to do the stunt because it's so dangerous.
I've never been skydiving because I am definitely scared of heights. I don't mind airplanes. I can sit on a plane, whatever, but I don't like heights. But I don't know how long it takes to get from the plane to the floor, and then to reload, get yourself back into the plane, go back up into the sky, drop down again, because obviously they wouldn't have done 106 in one day, surely.
No,
you want to wonder how long it would have taken from takeoff to getting in the right position, because obviously you need to film in the exact same place each time for the continuity.
And the lighting.
Out,
exactly. Because it's like sunset. So there was probably like an hour window that they could shoot each day too. So I have no idea exactly. I think it's all in the article. I skimmed it today, but I had heard it on a podcast when CinemaCon was happening a few months ago. But yeah, there's a few crazy stunts in this movie, and I do note that Tom Cruise must think he is Ethan Hunt at this point, because he's willing to risk everything to get what he wants, you know, like, and man, the dude is like I've become a fan of this franchise. Like, some people really latch onto the Fast and Furious franchise, and some people latch onto Transformers. I think this is my action franchise right now, like, where I'm in for Mission Impossible. Like, when it's coming out, I'm in. I haven't decided if this is the best, but man, it definitely feels like it right now. Like, I'm still on a euphoric high from watching it last night, and I luckily did not use my movie pass to see this, so I will get to use it later, hopefully, you know, when it's not surge pricing, or I believe they've even blacked this movie out of their ticket options for the weekend, but nonetheless, I had 2 free tickets from another digital service provider, and that's what I used to go see this in the biggest IMAX we have in Orlando. And I think it's the biggest IMAX in the state, and it was definitely worth it. My daughter also loved it. We had a great time, and again, I am a huge Simon Pegg fan, and I love Benji's character so much. So
some of those set pieces would have looked monumentally good on IMAX. I mean, there's a awesomely choreographed motorbike chase in this film.
Oh man!
And there's a kind of James Bond-esque ending, which I won't go into obviously, but the set piece at the end, and but it's bigger and better than pretty much anything Bond's done before. Paris looks bloody good as well in this film. I've got to give out. There's some really lovely cinematography in this film. Some of the shots are mainly in Paris are just beautiful to look at, and I mean, more than just the set pieces, because the set pieces in this film are just out of this world, and that isn't hyperbole. They really are fantastically.
Which did
put
you
together.
See Man from U.N.C.L.E.?
Yes.
I thought there was like a nice little nod to that movie with the because there's a scene where Cavill gets a car wedged in between two walls in Man from U.N.C.L.E., and then
That's right, yes.
There's like a nod to that in Mission Impossible.
Yes.
I don't know if it is. I found it very coincidental that another spy movie that Cavill was in had a very similar scene happen. Different but similar in that way, and I was like, I wonder if anyone else in this theater even saw Man from U.N.C.L.E.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Maybe McQuarrie put it in there as a nod to get more people to actually see the Man from U.N.C.L.E., because that was a very good spy film. And Henry Cavill's fantastic in that film, but he's very good in this. And physically, he's imposing. He's got a presence about him, and you really wouldn't want to mess with this guy. Tom Cruise does what Tom Cruise does best. Ignore the Mummy from last year, because that was horrible.
Yeah.
If you want a film from last year, watch him in American Made. That's a fabulous film. But in terms of this is like I was saying, the set pieces are what you go to see, but the story itself is compelling. The performances are very good. It like I said, it's a long film, but it's paced so very well that you don't feel bored. And like you said, you're sucked in, you're drawn in. And this is a franchise which I've just sort of had not a massive interest in. When it's good, it's pretty good. When it's bad, it's not great. But this is another level. I think this is the best MI film for me, and I will. If they're making a 7th, which I'm sure they will, I will be there on opening night.
I will say, I think McQuarrie has his work cut out for him, because this is a spy genre film, and the spy genre films have so many expectations of what they're gonna do, and this one falls into some of those tropes. But every time I thought I knew exactly what was going on, and that like he thought he was gonna trick me, he didn't trick me, but he didn't. That wasn't what he was going for. Like, he was never... He knows how smart the audience is, I guess is what I'm saying. He doesn't, like, oh, I gotcha. Like, he's like, no, I knew you knew this, but here's how it's going to play. And it plays differently than expected. And it still isn't like a twist, per se, and it's not just, twisting the tropes or flipping the tropes around, but he uses them to make the story compelling and interesting. And I think that's, really, really... great on his part, because it could have just been like, okay, it's another Mission Impossible movie, and it is, but it's not. It's like the characters are smart, and they've learned from their other movies. Like, they've actually experienced these things and have taken that into their processing, and they know how to now use that information to continue to be a spy. And I really find that kind of refreshing to see characters grow, and change. Not just during the course of the film, but like from film to film. Like, look at Benji's character from the first film. He's like in the office computer nerd. Now he's insisting on being a field agent, and yet, even I love that conversation. This is an early scene in the movie, but when he's like, "Of course I'm nervous, but I don't look nervous," and he's like, "You're nervous," and Tom Cruise is just like, "No, I'm not nervous."
And Ving Rhames says he's not nervous. He just jumps in. No, he's not nervous. And Tom Cruise flashes that smile.
Oh man, I know a lot of people do hate on Cruise. I am a fan of his performances. I'm not saying he could be an awful human being, but on screen, Tom Cruise works for me, for sure. I don't know that he is an awful human being. I'm not saying that. I'm saying he might be. I don't know what he's like in real life, but on screen, this persona, I definitely think there's way worse people than Tom Cruise. Whatever, from what I know, I'm slipping down a slope that I'm not trying to. I'm just saying I don't know much about Tom Cruise as a person outside of his performances, but his performances always seem to work for me, and I find him generally a joy to watch. Even in like the Mummy, the worst thing they did with the Mummy is they tried to write him a character that it was so counter his on-screen persona that I think it like fought itself, like, because he's trying to be kind of a schmuck in the Mummy, yet he's still charming Tom Cruise. It just doesn't work. But we've seen it work, like in Magnolia. He's a complete ass, and he does a great job at being that guy, but it does seem so counter to his normal type, you know. But Ethan Hunt really is, like, I think that's his guy now. Like, that's his character, you know. Tony Stark is to Robert Downey Jr., Ethan Hunt is to Tom Cruise for me. This is who I think of now when I think of Tom Cruise.
Yeah, and he plays it so well. He's an action star. Tom Cruise is an action star. I mean, this is a long way away from Rain Man and Cocktail, and hell, even bloody Top Gun. But he is the character, and he's so good, and he's got that charming, winning smile, which can win me over most times, except in The Mummy, because that was awful. But yeah, this film's written well. Even the moments where you think, really, those moments are explained, and you think, okay, that makes perfect sense. Which I appreciated that, you know, you're not just like you mentioned, you're not just taken for an idiot. Yeah. I'd like the next film to be called Mission. Could be possible, because there will be the 7th film. But yeah, I mean, what more to say about this film? I had such a good time with it, more than I ever thought I would. And here's to the next one.
Yeah, and again, Henry Cavill seems like he gets a lot of hate. I think partly, like, people who love the traditional Christopher Reeve Superman, I think, hated Man of Steel. I actually like Man of Steel. I'm one of the few supporters of that movie.
I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I had moments. I really like. I'm not a Superman fan normally, and I like Cavill as Superman. I like Cavill as an actor, and the things I've seen him in outside of the DC movies, and I try to forget that Immortals movie because it wasn't very good, but but Man for Uncle, I thought he was really, really strong in, and you know, that movie, I mean, it's Armie Hammer, him, and Alicia Vikander, like, holy cow.
Guy Ritchie as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. It is, and it's much better than his King Arthur movie, so, you know, it's a film that somehow just got completely overlooked, and I think Hugh Grant's in it too, isn't he?
Yeah. I think when it came out, it was just released at the wrong time of year. I think it was released late on in the summer season, and it kind of in the what do they call it, the dumping ground, when it really shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, I mean, because Armie Hammer at that point hadn't done much. Now he's done a lot of, like, I mean, he's always been a really strong indie presence, but the few attempts he's had at mainstream stuff, he seems to have not done well with. Lone Ranger. And then this, Man from Uncle didn't do well, but I do think that's a movie. If you like the Mission Impossible movies, I definitely think it's worth giving it a go. It's a solid spy movie, and it's got some really cool set pieces in it. Not as cool as Mission Impossible Fallout, though. Definitely, if you were a fan of any of them, if you haven't seen it for some reason, get to your local theater and check it out. This is the closest movie we have to release date, because by the time this episode comes out, Mission Impossible will only have been out a couple of days. So definitely get to the theater, check this movie out. Hopefully MoviePass will stop being crazy, or Regal Cinemas and all the other big chains will offer their equivalent to the A-list, so you can make a reason to see this film. And I do recommend seeing it in the biggest screen with the best sound that you possibly can, because, man, there are some moments in this movie where the sound definitely plays a factor. The skydiving sequence, the sound cuts out for a minute because of the lightning strike. Oh, man, that scene is probably one of my favorite action scenes, like, ever. It's super short, but man, it's so crazy, and it's so interesting, and like you mentioned, the visual elements of this movie in that scene especially are gorgeous. Like, that sunset they're skydiving through is brilliant. So yeah, big fan. I think, Matt, is that the last movie that you've seen on our list here?
I was going to say, yeah, from this side, that's all from me. No, I'm not going anywhere. Mainly because 4 of the 5 movies coming up haven't been released in the UK, and there's no way I could have seen them, which is annoying because 4 of the 5 films, the ones that haven't been released are the ones I really want to see. But before I hand over, all I will say is the casts for some of these films are out of this world. So over to JB for the next load.
Yeah, and I will be as quick as possible here. I don't want to drag these out too long, but the big release that I saw was Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation. It has the Adam Sandler cast, if you will, his group of friends that he likes to keep giving work. Adam Sandler, Andy Samberg, Selena Gomez, Kevin James, Fran Drescher, Jim Gaffigan, Kathryn Hahn. They make their first appearance in this third movie. Keegan-Michael Key, who showed up in the second film but replaced CeeLo Green, character of the Mummy in the first film, which I didn't realize it was Keegan-Michael Key in the second film until this one. But David Spade, Molly Shannon, and Steve Buscemi. I don't know how Sandler has always roped Steve Buscemi into his movies. Like, of all the actors around him, he is clearly the one who has the biggest pedigree. But, man, he has done some crap roles in the Sandler films. I mean, over and over again, he clearly must just love Adam, because he does not need to do these movies. But I liked the first Hotel Transylvania a lot, like way more than I ever expected to. And now, I believe my daughter was 8 when that movie came out, and she's 14 now. We have seen all 3 of them in the theater. I don't really remember the second one. I know we saw it, but it's gone. Like, it is out of my brain. So either I didn't like it, or it was just super forgettable. The third one's kind of forgettable too. It's fine. There wasn't as many laughs as the first film. Again, this actually kind of suffers from the Mamma Mia thing, where if the father-daughter characters would just be honest with each other for 5 seconds, most of the quote-unquote drama would not be there, and that always drives me nuts. It worked in the first film, because the first film, it made more sense as to why he was withholding information. It's not sensible here. It, in fact, makes zero sense that he won't just talk to her at this point. This is a good example of a sequel whose characters have not learned from the previous movies. They kind of fall back into their old patterns. But there's some fun stuff. Andy Samberg's character, I'm a big Andy Samberg fan. And it's definitely, if you have kids, young kids especially, it's fun. It's definitely worth checking out. It's got a lot of silly humor. There's moments where you'll laugh, but nothing that's going to be super memorable. The first film managed to get some quotes that were like quotable moments. I don't think there's anything like that in this movie that you're going to walk around like reciting after you see it. So it's going to be fairly forgettable, but it's not bad in any shape or form. That's Hotel Transylvania 3. Did you say that one's not out over there yet?
This one is out, but it's the one of the entire list I haven't been able to see so far. I didn't mind the first film. I thought, I quite enjoyed that. The second film was alright. It was pretty good. But yeah, I wasn't overly keen to rush out and see Hotel Transylvania. I will see it, but as for the next 4, these are the films I want to see, but they're not out here, which is frustrating.
It is to me too, because I know that you are a film lover like myself, and I mean that's how we've become friends. And I really want you to see these because I'd love to talk to you about them. Because even here, not a lot of my friends have seen these yet. They are out, and all of them have played somewhere close to me, except for 8th grade. 8th grade is officially not out until the 4th here. I got to see it because of a critic screening. Well, actually, it was a AMC Stubs screening. So like Stub members got like special invites to a special screening, but then there was 20 critics seats available, so I was able to go, and I got to bring my wife and daughter with me, which was really huge for 8th grade. 8th grade's directed by Bo Burnham, who is a stand-up comedian who got super famous on YouTube. And he's pretty brilliant. I don't like every single one of his jokes, and he's a music comic, so he'll integrate songs into his stuff. He has some really good stuff out there, though. But this is his directorial debut. He wrote this film, and so you're thinking a young comic, probably in his mid-20s. He's going to do a movie about a mid-20s guy, right? Well, no. He writes it about an 8th grader, female. And he casts a first-time actress, Elsie Fisher, in the lead role, and basically puts the entire movie on her shoulders, and she is fantastic. I actually got to see 8th grade at South by Southwest, and I was blown away then. I've been waiting to show my wife and daughter, and finally got them to see it. They liked it. I think I love it more. And partially because of Josh Hamilton's character, who plays Elsie's father, or Kayla's father in the movie. And there is some really funny stuff, but it's comedic, it's stress-inducing at times, it's so accurate a portrayal. I don't know if my daughter sees how many similarities she shares with this character, but I'm sitting there like looking over at her like, do you get this? And like, there's a scene where Kayla gets ready to go to the mall and she's wearing a choker necklace and she has a flannel tied around her waist, and I look over at my daughter who's wearing a choker necklace and has a flannel tied around her waist. I'm just like, it's you get this, right? But I love the movie both times. It's in my top 10 for the year right now. I really, really want everyone to get to see this. If it comes near you, I definitely recommend 8th Grade. It's tough. There's a few scenes that are tough to sit through. But Burnham has a really good eye. There's some really strong like cinematic elements in this movie. The way he reveals some of the jokes are just super spot on. I love his use of sound in this. There's like a very 80s kind of John Hughes throwback where whenever she sees this one character, like the character has his own theme song that kicks in, and it's like real like kind of dubstep EDM sounding, but it's super funny. I love the way it's shot. It's for a first-time filmmaker, it's pretty outstanding. It's I can't recommend it enough. 8th Grade. I'll move on to another first-time filmmaker. Boots Riley had his film Sorry to Bother You. I got to go to a critic screening. It is actually playing now everywhere. Not everywhere, because this movie wouldn't play everywhere. It's not a movie for everybody, for sure. But Sorry to Bother You stars Lakeith Stanfield, the outstanding, amazing, cannot be spoken highly enough Tessa Thompson, Jermaine Fowler, Omari Hardwick, Danny Glover, Stephen Yeun, who you might know as Glenn from The Walking Dead, and I mentioned him a little bit ago, Armie Hammer. This movie's nuts to just put out there, and that needs to be said. I do not want to spoil anything about this movie, but it's nuts. If you've seen the trailer for Sorry to Bother You, you see right away it's a little crazy. It's super innovative. It's super out there. It has a lot to say. I'm still working through some of what it's saying. I think Lakeith Stanfield is a powerhouse in this movie. He's so naturalistic, and the way he reacts to things is so genuine, but he has this air of comedy about him that just works so well. Tessa Thompson is a chameleon, man. Like, you saw Annihilation.
I did.
She's fantastic in Annihilation. You saw Thor Ragnarok.
I certainly did.
She's Valkyrie. Completely different character than her character in Annihilation, right? Like, leaps and bounds different. And then I mentioned Little Woods that she is in with Lily James. Completely different, very down-to-earth, dramatic role. She's in Creed, which we have Creed 2 coming out in a few months. She's the girlfriend to I'm going to forget Creed's first name because it's not Apollo. It is... it starts with an A too. Why can't I do... This is the second time this happened. Adonis, yes. Adonis Creed's girlfriend in the first movie, and it looks like she will be that role in the second movie. She's just so good, and in this movie especially, she plays Detroit. Yes, that name is definitely purposeful. I don't know. This movie is so crazy. It's so innovative. It's like nothing else that you will see this year, and I unfortunately am not the first critic to say that. But if you are a film lover, if you like interesting stuff, if you like things that are going to make you think and maybe go places that you would never expect it to, you should see this movie. Honestly, even if you see this and hate it, you should just see it, because there's not a lot of movies going to be made like this, and that's worth noting. It deserves to be seen. Maybe not loved and maybe not appreciated by everyone who sees it, but those who do are really going to love and appreciate it. It's super great. I loved it. I was still, I don't know if I agree with every choice that's made. I don't know if I understand everything that Boots Riley is trying to say, but my God, is it innovative and super smart. Real quick, I guess, if you're not familiar, Lakeith Stanfield's character is Cassius. He gets a job as a telemarketer and is given advice by Danny Glover's character that if he's going to be successful, he needs to use his white voice, which is important because they explain what white voice is, and it is not just some stereotypical, you got to be like a white guy. It's more about the air in which you present yourself. It's this kind of carefree nature, that you have no worries, no concerns, nothing at all to be ever concerned with. That's what he means when he says white voice. And so Lakeith Stanfield's character starts to have a white voice that is voiced by David Cross. And man, the way they do it, like the phone call sequences, which could be really boring, right? You could have a phone call where we're cutting back and forth between one person's and then the other, or we could just be on one side of the conversation. No. Our filmmaker decides to drop us in to the room where the other person is, seeing whatever they're doing while they're doing it. And what makes it even more interesting is Lakeith Stanfield seems to be aware of the fact that he's in this other room, even though he's really not. It's just super surreal. It's very experimental. Awesome movie. Can't stress it enough.
Well, I on those two films, just quickly, 8th Grade I'm looking forward to, simply because of the praise that you've effused upon it, because I know how much you've enjoyed this film for obviously lots of different reasons, so I'm really looking forward to that. And also Molly Ringwald loves it, so that's a big plus for me. And sorry to bother you, I've heard, on your point now, I've heard conflicting stories here. Some people think it's one of the, more out there but better films of the year. Others don't like it so much, but I like a film when it's divisive, because that is the essence of film for me. Where I might go and see it and think it's awful, whereas obviously you enjoyed it, but as long as I have a constructive reason for that. But I'm so looking forward to seeing it. I'm also anything which can scrub Lakeith Stanfield's performance in Death out of my mind. Please give me that. But these two films I'm absolutely looking forward to seeing. As soon as I see them, I'll get on the blower and speak to you about them.
Yeah.
But the next film I want to see, simply because of the emotional resonance which people seem to hold for it.
Dude, this next film I've seen 3 times. It's Won't You Be My Neighbor. I also saw this at South by Southwest, but I saw it twice this month. I went early in July. My daughter and I went. We went to our local art house theater, the Enzian. Support the Enzian. I highly recommend, if you are in the Orlando area, even just visiting, that you check out the Enzian. They are, I believe, rated one of the best independent theaters in the country. And I took my daughter there for her first time to that theater to see Won't You Be My Neighbor, which is also her first... Nope, it's her second big screen documentary, which makes me very proud as a parent that I can say my daughter has seen 2 documentaries in the theater. But my daughter also cried at this movie. Now, she did not grow up with Mr. Rogers. She does not cry a lot, and she's not a tomboy, but she definitely has this kind of tough girl persona about her, and she does not cry frequently, and especially at movies. She cried at the first screening. Now, we then took my wife and her friend with us to see it a second time for my daughter, a third time for me, at our local theater that had it, another independent art house type theater called the Polk Theater in Lakeland, to represent that too. And my wife cried so much she got a migraine afterwards.
Wow.
And I cried more the third time. I've cried each time I've seen it. The third time I cried so much. And then I was listening to a podcast today. I think it was Film Spotting, and they mentioned Won't You Be My Neighbor, and just a scene they mentioned made me start to tear up again. I am such a Mr. Rogers fanboy right now, dude. I grew up with him. I watched him on TV. I remember a lot of the shows, and I grew up in the 80s, so I had the later Rogers show. But what he represents and the apparent truthfulness of what he represented and the passion that he has for what he did, I think, are the 3 factors that make this such an emotional journey. It's fun too. You're not just crying the whole time. You might have tears in your eyes. There are moments that will shatter you, but it's like happy shatter. You know what I mean? Like you're so overjoyed that this kind of good person ever existed that you're moved to tears. Like, that's ultimately the way I would say it. It's not inherently sad. There are a couple of moments that are sad, but it's more you're so overwhelmed by his goodness that the only way to let that joy, you're gonna pop if you don't cry. Like, you have to get it out. And I am inspired by this documentary. some people are saying this is the best documentary ever and things like that. I don't think that's fair. I think it does exactly what it wants to do. I think the subject matter lends itself to the emotions, and the filmmaker, whose name I don't have in front of me, I'm going to get momentarily here, he does a good job of giving it to you. I don't necessarily... Morgan Neville. I don't necessarily think this is the best documentary ever. It's one-sided for sure. And maybe there's only one side to it. Like, there's been rumors and legends about Mr. Rogers having this dark past and things like that. They address that here. It's kind of thrown away as those were all just nonsense rumors. But I do think it's a very well executed documentary. I am in no way trying to take anything away from it. It definitely might be the most emotionally attached movie I will ever have, and I do plan on teaching this film for the rest of my life as long as I'm teaching film. So I
can't wait to see this documentary. I've said it beyond me, you've heard me say it countless times, but we didn't have Mr. Rogers over here, but I've seen Mr. Rogers, the show, and I'm aware of obviously the earnestness and just the kind of the love and attachment that the United States has for this man. And just obviously just hearing what you said then and other reviews and reactions from seeing it, of course you're going to want to see it, but also I just like watching good documentaries about good people, so I'm looking forward to this. Hopefully I bawl my eyes out, because I don't think I've ever bawled my eyes out at a film before. There's been, not because I'm a hardened soul, in fact I'm actually a big softie, but there's been a few, like Big Fish almost, and a few, but I don't know, I'm waiting for one that makes me just sit there and just I fall asleep in a puddle of my own tears. But hopefully, I'm looking forward to seeing this documentary on many reasons, and obviously after the review and summary you've just given it, even more so.
Yeah, I give we do the review thing, we both write them. A lot of people appear to read them. I don't always get to hear back from people.
Yes.
And a few close friends who, it's funny because the people who I know personally that know I do this, they seem to disregard my opinions more often than not. I don't know like how to take that, I guess, but I've had several people who have taken my opinion on this film, because they don't usually do documentaries, things like that, and everyone that has taken my advice to see it has raved about it, and everyone I know except for my daughter's friend has cried at this movie. My daughter's friend is the only one who has not cried that I know for, like, personally, and she did a good job of articulating, like, she sees that he's a good guy, but it wasn't enough to make her want to cry, which might be maybe she's not as cynical as I am, and so that's a good thing, right? Like, I'm coming at this movie with this everybody sucks kind of attitude.
We are world weary now. Yes,
and so maybe she's been fortunate enough to not be there yet, but this is definitely one of my favorite films of the year, although the next film I am going to rave about too, and I'm sorry, Matt, that I have to talk so much.
I really want to see this film because it's got such a good premise and it's got a great cast. Kiersey Clemens is in it, but fire away.
Brett Haley is the director of Hearts Beat Loud, which I got to see first back in April at the Florida Film Festival, and Brett Haley was there actually and gave a Q&A, and he was super awesome to just talking to the crowd. I thought he was like just a really, really passionate person. But this came to the Polk Theater as well the week before. Won't You Be My Neighbor came, and I was like, I really wanted my daughter to see this, and she loved it too. Did you see Brett Haley's film The Hero with Sam Elliott from last year?
Yes.
So that movie surprised me. I didn't expect to really get into it as much as I did, because it is. I picked a Sunday morning to watch it, and I watched it on my computer for some reason, and I had headphones, and it's such a chill movie that it felt like the perfect Sunday morning movie to me. I don't know. I really liked The Hero a lot. So that was part of the reason I wanted to see this. The other main kicker for me was Nick Offerman was the lead, who I am a huge fan of. But it also has Kiersey Clemens, who, if you saw the ill-fated Flatliners remake, she was in that. But don't hold that against her. She's fantastic in this movie. Sasha Lane, who is in The Miseducation of Cameron Post that I got to see at Tribeca, which is coming out in
She was
August.
so good in American Honey.
And then American Honey, where her breakthrough performance. We also get Toni Collette in this movie. Very different film from Hereditary. Blythe Danner and Ted Danson play supporting roles, and they're all great. Ted Danson, so good in this movie. He cracks me up every time. This movie has drama. There's drama in it, and it has some sad things. I won't lie, I cried real heavy the second time seeing this during one specific moment, and I was just kind of like surprised at how emotionally moved I was. But this movie deals with music, and it needs to be noted, I am a musician, or at least I was for most of my from like age 13 till I was like 31 or so. I played in bands. Music was my life. It was my passion, just besides movies. And the difference was I thought I could be a professional musician. I don't know why I thought that, but that was my dream. And this movie deals with that, both music and also the idea of it being a dream, this pursuit. It deals with a father and daughter. The father, Nick Offerman, and his daughter, Clemens, and her going off to college. So she's like 17, about to be 18, or just turned 18. He is also, while he's dealing with that, he's also transitioning careers. And so there's this whole idea of change that's kind of in the film. It's brilliant, because while he's going through this, he kind of he pushes her to be in a band with him. And she doesn't want to be in a band, but they jam together. Like, they both are talented with music. And it's every aspect of this movie is joyous. It's fun, it's funny, it's heartfelt. Nick Offerman gives a terrific performance, and for my money, there's nothing that makes me giggle more than any time Nick Offerman is happy in anything. Like, if you've seen Parks and Recreation, the best example of it would be when he sees Little Sebastian for the first time and can't contain the joy. Like, he's giggling and he's smiling, and if you know his normal demeanor, it is completely counter to that. And that happens a few times in this movie. Not as silly as he gets with Little Sebastian, but where he's so hyped up and he's so joyous, and you just buy into it because it emanates out of the screen and infects your soul in the best way possible. This movie is needed right now in a world where we're full of cynicism, we're full of down stuff, and there's so much negativity. Hearts Beat Loud is positive on so many areas. It's progressive in a lot of ways, and not in a beat you over the head with it. It's a real subtle progressiveness where it's just, no, this is just how we are now. Get over it and move on. And man, it's brilliant. Every performance is great. It is in my top 5 for the year. I love this movie. I can't wait to own it. It's one that I easily see rewatching over and over again. It's great. I can't wait till you get to see it, Matt.
This Hearts Beat Loud comes out next week in the United Kingdom. So that's
great.
Exciting. I think it's the 3rd of August, I want to say. So I think that's Wednesday, I think. As for the other 3, as far as I'm aware, as far as I can see, there are no release dates for any of them. I can understand why something like Won't You Be My Neighbour wouldn't get a wide release in the United Kingdom. But as for Sorry to Bother You in 8th Grade, I'm surprised. I mean, I'm sure they'll be playing it probably some of the smaller indie films in cinemas in London. But Hearts Beat Loud is the only one that's getting a major theatrical release that I according to IMDb. But I like these kind of films, these musical films. As a film that came out last year, Band-Aid, I think it was called. I really had a good time with that film as well.
I need to watch that one, actually. That's been on my radar, and I keep forgetting about it. And so I haven't gone to it yet, but I definitely want to see that one.
I enjoyed that an awful lot. But I like those kind of indie music type films that have a purpose to them and have a soul, or have a heart, if you will.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to this. And yeah, it comes out next week. So once I see it, I'll let you know what I think about that. Definitely. And Toni Collette's become one of my favorite actresses. I mean, before Hereditary even, but Hereditary only cemented it. She's just always so charming and so subtle and I don't know, she's just naturalistic, and I really like that.
If you the way back, she's so good as the mom in that movie, and she's Anton Yelchin's mom in Fright Night, the remake.
Yeah.
She's just obviously Little Miss Sunshine, big movie for her, but well, big independent movie for her. I'm a fan, and she gets a lot to do here, really, but it's definitely Nick Offerman and Clemen's movie. But those supporting characters add so much to the film, and they do a terrific job doing it. So, yeah, I can't stress enough. If Hearts Beat Loud is coming near you, please go see it. Support this movie. It deserves to be seen. I also think Nick Offerman is an underappreciated actor. Everything I've seen him in, I love him. He's the dad in Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. The Kings of Summer, he's also the dad there, and I think that movie deserves to be seen. I think it's overlooked. Really solid coming of age story. I forget the director, but he directed Kong Skull Island.
It's gone from my head, but
yeah, I normally know it, but Jordan Voight Roberts.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah,
I got the Voight bit right.
Yeah. The Kings of Summer was a solid movie with Offerman in it, and Offerman's in The Hero. He's the supporting character in that. And man, if you skip The Hero too, I stress that. Check that movie out. We did go a little long here, but those independent films deserve to be talked about, and they are getting some releases. So like, check your local listings. One that I didn't get to see this month yet, but it is playing close to me, is Blind Spotting, which I saw at South by Southwest. It's currently
you liked that one, didn't you?
It's my favorite movie of the year right now. I'm planning on going to see it on Sunday with my editor buddy David, and hopefully my daughter, because it is, oh god, it is such a interesting and funny and also very poignant film. Man, it says some stuff. I loved it. It's playing again, so it's out there. Check your local listing. Try to see some of these movies that you maybe wouldn't otherwise see, and that you're definitely not seeing, every time you look at a TV. You might see a trailer once in a while for these movies, but most likely you're not. And if you're listening to this podcast, you clearly like movies. Go check some of these indie ones out.
I whisper it quietly, but sometimes these indie films are a lot better than the mainstream ones that come out.
For sure, the 5 I just listed are better than most of the other movies that we saw this month.
I can't wait to see. The thing is, usually I get worried or / nervous when I hear somebody speak with so much praise about a film, and I think, God, I'm going to go in with that expectation. But on the flip side of that, just from what I've heard about the films and the synopsis, I've sold on them anyway. So just to hear a positive review only reinforces that. I try not to watch trailers too much anyway, because I do like to go in, as blind or as raw to the story as possible. So I was looking. I know Won't You Be My Neighbour probably won't get a wide release, but when it's out on digital, I'll grab that. But as for the other ones, I'm especially Blind Spotting because of your praise for that. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I mean, it's a packed month. I'm going to put you on the spot now. We've mentioned our worst film. I think we said was The Equalizer for the both of us.
Yeah.
The best film of this monster episode was Mission Impossible Fallout for me. Now, putting you on the spot, what would you pick as your number one of the month?
I feel like I want to cheat. If I were going to go mainstream only, I'd say Mission Impossible. But if I'm picking from everything I've seen, for me, and it is hard. I'm flipping coins in my head here, and they keep landing on their side. So, I think I'm gonna go with Won't You Be My Neighbor. I think it's such a compelling story, that it's hard to not say it's the best. It's told so well, and part of it, I mean, it kind of tells itself, but it's so loving and affectionate, and it just works. Heartbeat Loud would probably be the other, though. I do think that will be one of my favorite movies, possibly of all time, like in my top 50.
Wow.
It does so much for me, and again, it hits those emotional cores in very, very natural ways, and it's got some really catchy music. I know there's a vinyl press of the soundtrack with just the 3 songs that they write in the movie. That's supposed to be like limited edition, so like that's something really cool if you're a collector of vinyl or something. But either one of those would definitely be up there. And I don't, in no way do I mean to discredit Sorry to Bother You or 8th Grade. I both think those are great. Those other two just really speak to me. And 8th Grade's right there too, though. Like, it does speak to me because I connect with the father, and also being a teacher. There's some stuff at the school that really, really hits home, including, I don't want to say, but there's a really crazy moment scene at one of the schools that American teachers especially will connect with. So yeah, I'm gonna go Won't You Be My Neighbor for my best of the month. Bloody, 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 bloody.